know how we can actually utilize the backup copy job to cover the 3-2-1 rules compliances. Now, not only backup copy job and backup copy to tape job, we can also support with another options to create additional backup using public cloud solutions such as object storage. So here in this advanced repository, we will also cover utilizing the scale-up backup repository together with similar like Amazon object storage, things like this, to cover the 3-2-1 compliances. Okay, so first thing we look into the scale backup repository, and later we also cover the DDoS appliances, hardening repository, which is new in V11, and lastly into file system for your repository. So let's see here, first thing, scale backup repository, for short we call it SOBR, and in Vim sometimes they call it SOBR. So with this SOBR, we can have at least one performance tier repository available. Now the performance tier usually will be looking into the normal repository that we have. It's either utilizing DAS, NAS, or the DDoS appliances, whereby this performance tier will usually be your primary repository, and this tier support the normal repository component. Okay. Now with this, you will see that I am actually adding in what we call the SOBR configuration. Okay. Here. So you will see that when I create my backup job later, right? Backup job 01, for example. Now I can point to the SOBR instead of pointing to individual repository. Okay, so repository 03, for example. Now I have 1, 2, 3 repository here. All these 3 is part under SOBR has an extent. So it's actually part of the SOBR. So this SOBR, we can consider it like a pools of repository. Okay. Now the good thing here is when you're utilizing SOBR, when my backup job is pointing to SOBR, I will have this flexibility to write my backup data into any of these repository. Okay. So if my repository is full, and then I can also write it into the other one. For example, here, virtual machine 1.vbk is here. Then you have your VIB. Now, when they are full, your virtual machine 1.vib can also continue to write in the other repository that is part of your SOBR. So this gives you flexibility on managing your repository resources. So if you point to a single repository earlier, then you will have some limitation issue later. When your space is full, it's not easy for you to move from one repository to another repository again. Okay? You need to copy all the data manually to the other new repo before you can actually point to the new repository. But here, because your backup job is actually pointing to the SOBR, so under SOBR, we can now flexibly manage our repository here. So we can add on additional repository to expand the pool, and we can even control how my data placement will go. Right? Pretty easy here, and give you more flexibility. That's why if you do have this SOBR feature, I will suggest you to create it first, even if you're using a single repository. So later it's easier for you to manage, flexible for you to add on additional repository if you need to. Scale backup repository only supports from enterprise licensing and above. If you're using standard license, it doesn't come with this feature. And then scale backup repository, they are utilizing per VM backup chain by default. Okay, per VM backup chain. So it's set on the SOBR level. And then from here, you will see SOBR, it will run the primary backup on your normal repository. Then utilizing the backup data here, I can now move or copy the backup data into another tier, what we call capacity tier. So the capacity tier here will be used as your secondary repository. Currently, Vim still do not support to send the backup data direct to the object storage capacity tier. Okay, so capacity tier is either you buy on-prem S3 storage, maybe sits in your DR. S3 compatible storage comes with a lot of vendor. NetApp, I think they do have it. Okay. So Huawei also having it. A few different storage vendor come with S3 compatible. Then you can also subscribe to public cloud, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM for their object storage solution to be used as part of the SOBR. So you will see that capacity tier is just additional tier available in the scale backup repository. So it's an optional thing to use. So when we look into the performance here, you will see that over here, we have two different data placement rules. So when you have multiple extent being part of the SOBR member, so I can utilize which particular repository to be part of it. And then after I selected this repository, you will see that over here, I can configure either data locality or performance. Okay. Now, usually by default, we are using data locality. Okay, so data locality, how does it look like? Pretty easy. Now, if I have, for example, repository 01, then I have maybe repository 02, etc. Now, these two is under SOBR. A, for example, okay, SOBR A. Now, when I back up my virtual machine data, you will see that VM1.vbk is here, VM1.vib is here, then VM1.vib is here again. Okay? Then virtual machine 2.vbk is here in repository 2. Based on your current loading on the repository, they will assign it for different virtual machine backup. So you see here, virtual machine 2, sorry about that. Virtual machine 2, full backup, and incremental backup. Now, this kind of placement, you will see that your incremental backup will always follow the last repository used for your last backup, usually. So this is what we call data locality. Okay, this is what we call data locality. Now, if you are using performance, okay, maybe I have another SOBR B. So come with maybe repository 3, then repository 4. Okay, so now I have my virtual machine VBK running here. Then I can also write my virtual machine incremental backup here. Then VM2 VBK, then VM2.vib. Now, I am now utilizing performance kind of configuration whereby when my backup job runs, my backup data can write to any of these repository inside my SOBR extent. So this will able to improve overall performance because the data write will be selected according to your current repository loading. So this is what we call performance. Okay, performance option. So they don't care which repository is used for your last backup, and your backup file will be stored in multiple different repositories, scatteredly, fragmented. So if you do have a lot of concern on your data placement and dependency, then you might need to go with default data locality usually. Okay? So performance is mainly to improve overall incremental backup usually, or if you have some equipment such as DD appliances that you want to only keep full backup, then you can utilize performance option to select which repository can use to keep incremental backup, and which one is used only for full backup. You can also utilize the performance option to handle that kinds of separation. Okay, so this is the placement policy for your performance tier. Pretty easy. Okay. Any questions so far for this performance tier repository in SOBR before we move on to the capacity tier? Okay, so no question. Let me just continue then. Okay, so next one, let's move on. My WhatsApp is a bit hanging. Okay, not sure why. Is it due to my RAM memory? Laptop's getting slower by day. Okay. So next thing. Now inside your SOBR, the main thing there will be performance tier. Okay. So after we settle on the performance tier, next thing here, capacity tier, you will see that this option is basically optional with a check button. Okay. Now if you do enable this option, your expired data will have a different kinds of behavior, according to what you actually selected here as a configuration. Now, when you extend scale out backup repository with object storage, okay, so this can support multiple different options, as you can see here, either Amazon, S3 compatible, Microsoft, etc. And then using this capacity tier, okay, if you select move backup, okay, if you select only move backup, yeah, your expired data in your on-prem performance tier repository will have different behavior. After the data got expired, it will not get deleted straight away if you select move option here. They will keep inside your repository for a few days more, as you can see, based on this configuration, before they are moved to object storage. So this is one of the options. Okay. That's why you will see why your backup data is still sitting in your repository, although they already expired, maybe due to this particular configuration sometimes. Okay. Now, using capacity tier, we also support another additional feature here. If you are subscribing to Amazon S3 storage, okay, we do support to work together with the object log function, okay, in the S3 bucket level. So if you have the object log, it is basically to create immutable backup data, and it can protect against ransomware. Okay? So additionally, using this capacity tier will give you this function, but it will come in additional cost. So later we also cover that, okay, in the slides. These are some tips only. Then over here, let me just see on the options when you're utilizing capacity tier. So when you add on object storage into your scale backup repository, we come with copy mode, which is one, and also another what we call move backup. Okay. Now, first we look into copy options. So here you see, after I enable capacity tier, there are two options here. You can choose either to copy backup. You can select move backup, either one or both. Okay, so they give you different behavior here. Now, if you want to comply to 3-2-1 rules, this is a requirement, we need to utilize copy backup at least. Okay, copy backup will help you to fulfill 3-2-1 requirement, okay, by copy another additional backup to the object storage to keep in offsite, because the object storage usually will be staying in offsite. Okay, so this is a must. Now, how does your data placement works? If I select only copy mode, I did not select move, only copy mode. What happens? Copy to capacity tier options will be something like this. When my backup data available in your primary performance tier, straight away they will help you to copy additional backup data to the capacity tier. So this works quite similar like your backup copy job, immediate copy mode. Okay, immediate copy mode. You can also define a time period when they can actually copy the data. Okay, so as soon as the backup data ready, they will try to copy to the object storage. Now, this particular copy function is good, whereby I can make additional backup data as soon as possible, and these two backup is stored in two different types of equipment, and usually the capacity tier is offside. That's why using copy to capacity tier, we can fulfill to 3-2-1 rules requirement. Okay, get the idea? That's why if you do have 3-2-1 rules requirement, copy to capacity tier can also be utilized other than backup copy. Yeah, because backup copy can only support to copy your data from one repository to another repository, okay, or SOBR to another SOBR. But they are not used to copy data to capacity tier. This will be additional layer of function inside your SOBR storage. Okay? Now, same thing goes to incremental backup. Okay? No matter it is full backup or incremental backup, they will also make additional copy to your capacity tier. Straightforward and easy here. Okay, so utilizing capacity tier, you need to be careful, whereby I will need to pay more money when the data already resides in your object storage. Okay, because they will charge based on capacity usage usually, and when you try to restore data from capacity tier, you might get charged again for the download cost. This is how it works in public cloud. Data going in usually will be free of transfer. When you download the data back, they will require you to pay for it. Okay, so this happens to a lot of object storage, so you need to be careful on what package you actually subscribe. So utilizing copy to capacity options, they will also limit you on what kinds of backup that you can choose as your backup mode. So using copy to capacity tier, it works best with normal forward incremental. Okay, normal forward incremental. So if you have constraint on your original primary backup job to use only maybe forever forward incremental or reverse incremental, then I would suggest you to make a backup copy job to this SOBR again, and then from this SOBR they copy to the object storage, for example. Okay? So this is one of the options here. So it will in charge of your full backup and also incremental backup stored here. Okay, pretty easy. Now later there is a lab for you to also configure your object storage and the scale backup repository. So I will give you some time to complete that, to play around how does it look like when you plan to utilize this feature. Okay? Now if I am utilizing copy to capacity tier and I have a configuration policy just like this. Retention policy 7 restore point. I'm running daily backup. First thing, 4 incremental with schedule full, copy to capacity and no immutability here. Immutable is not enabled here. Then what happens to the retention to your data? Now when I start to have my backup data in both locations, one being your performance tier, normal repository on top. This is the one running on-prem usually. And I have another one below is your capacity tier, maybe using Amazon S3. Now, as soon as the backup data ready, they will copy down. Pretty easy. So I'm maintaining 2 sets of backup data here with respective retention policy. So what happens is when I have a new full backup, still remember the retention dependency. Here, they are broken off. So when you have a new full backup, the dependency basically broken off, and they will create their own sets of backup chain file dependency already. So the last dependent data will be J, which is on the Sunday. And then moving forward, when I have additional incremental backup, okay, you will see that over here, if J backup data is still required in your retention policy, because we set 7 retention point, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. J is still required. You will see that the dependent data like I, H, G, F, E, and your full backup will still be available. This does not change, just like what we learned earlier, right? As soon as the new backup chain here come with enough retention point, you will see that the older backup data here will get deleted entirely for the entire backup chain in on-prem performance tier repository, and they do the same to your object storage. So if you enable copy to capacity tier only, the capacity tier backup data retention policy, they will follow whatever you set in your primary backup job. Okay? So the capacity tier, it doesn't come with any additional retention policy available. It's either using copy mode that you follow your primary job retention policy, or you can utilize move mode to keep the data for longer time. Then you need to manually delete the data. Right? So this happens when your backup chain move on further, same case apply. Okay? So they will wait until the entire backup chain got expired, not needed anymore. Then only they will delete it from your on-prem and also your capacity tier data. Okay? So this is what we call copy to capacity tier. Any question you want to ask here before I move on to another option? It should find easier. Okay, so next thing, let's see. Okay, so now the capacity tier, we have copy mode. We have also move mode. What if I select only move mode? That means you say I uncheck copy, I only check and enable move mode option. Then what happens to your data? Now, if you select only move backup, okay, move backup will only apply to expired backup data. Okay, so over here you see, when my data starts to expire, what happens? Your data is still sitting in your local performance tier backup repository. When the backup data expired, they will then help you to move it to the object storage. Metadata will be remaining inside your local backup repository. So they will move the entire backup data and also metadata to the object storage to be kept for longer time. So this move mode is used to archive older expired backup data, just like the NAS backup long-term retention. Okay, so this is what we call move mode. So this move mode is for archive and only for older backup data. That's why using move mode only, it does not able to comply to 321 requirement. Okay, be careful on that. Now, if you choose only move mode, then we do able to support two options here. One being the forward incremental backup, where when your entire backup chain dependency got expired, they will help you to move to the object storage. Okay? Because using move mode, they will only touch your expired data and not all your data. Okay, so this is one option. And if you are utilizing reverse incremental, same thing here. Now, when you are utilizing reverse incremental, the older incremental backup data will start to expire, and those data will be offloaded, moving to the capacity tier instead. Alright, so this is move mode. Reverse incremental to support it, unlike copy to capacity tier that use and work together with only forward incremental. Okay? Now, how about the movement? You will see that over here, move to capacity tier. When the backup creates your backup data, it will only sit in your performance tier. No matter how many days are there, That's why using move to capacity only, it does not able to fulfill 3-2-1 requirement. Okay, so this is the data behavior. Now, it will only change after your data starts to expire here, you see. Now, the data is still required for this backup chain dependency, right? The data will not get moved yet until when you have a full backup created on Saturday. Now, when this new full backup created, the dependency is broken off, right? So that I can utilize this new full backup to actually fulfill another new backup chain. So as soon as your full backup ready inside your performance here, your expired data here will start to move to capacity tier. Okay. After the data is moved, they will then delete it from the performance tier here. That's why you will see move mode, they will only move the expired backup data, and you can utilize this data for a longer time sitting in the object storage. And you need to manually delete the data if you don't need it anymore in future. Okay. And this gives you longer retention policy or longer data stock time into your capacity tier over here. Okay. So same thing, when your data expired, they will then move it to capacity tier and delete it from the performance tier repository. Okay, pretty easy. So we'll see for capacity tier data, if you are utilizing copy mode only, then the retention will follow whatever you set in your primary backup data job. Now, if you're using move mode, then the data will sit there until you manually delete it. Right? So those are the two options. Any question for move mode? Pretty straightforward and easy for move mode, yeah? Only applicable to expired data. Now, next thing, what if I want both options benefit to combine together? Yes, you can. That's why you will see here, what if I enable copy and move mode both together? Then they will combine both benefit at the same time. So if you have this option, using copy and move mode together, I will able to use this configuration for the 3-2-1 rules, compliances, etc. Okay. And this option will also actually force you to utilize the normal for incremental only. So what happens when you configure these two options together? So you will see here, when I have copy and move to capacity tier enable, when my backup data created in performance tier, I will utilize copy mode to actually send additional backup copy to capacity tier. So using this, just like a normal copy to capacity tier option, I'm able to keep additional backup to fulfill 3-2-1 rules for sake. Okay. Same thing goes to your incremental backup data. Now, why I select copy and move mode? Because I want to keep this backup data in the capacity tier for longer time. Meaning to say, I do not want the data in capacity tier to follow the retention policy that I set in your primary job that created this backup file. That's why when you see here, when I have copy and move mode together, the backup data in performance tier will be a bit different. Okay, so when I have a newer backup created, as soon as a new full backup created, you will see that over here, the retention and also the data management behavior will utilize move to capacity tier options. So they will keep the data in capacity tier. They will only delete the expired data in performance tier to free up the space. So using this copy and move mode, I'm basically combining both benefits at the same time. Utilizing copy mode to move data or to copy additional backup data to capacity straight away, and then utilizing move mode retention policy to keep the capacity tier data for a longer time. Okay. So this will combine both benefit and also able to fulfill your 3-2-1 rules requirement. Okay. So during the exam, they will also ask you questions like this. Okay. if customer would like to comply to 321 rules over here, using object storage, do I utilize copy mode or move mode? Or both, for example. If it is a multi-answer, then you will see copy mode required, copy and move mode will also be supporting. Okay, so these are some of the hints and tips for your exam question. Yeah. So a lot of theory here, you need to be careful. You need to understand fully how it works, what is the behavior, then you will able to understand and also propose to what kind of solution the customer are planning to have. Okay, so now using S3 object storage, we can also utilize another feature called object lock. So this can be enabled in S3 object storage. Now, please bear in mind, this will incur additional costs because when you enable this feature, what happens? Your backup data that you have written to this S3 object storage, following operation cannot be performed anymore. I will not able to remove the data manually. Okay, so I cannot even change the retention policy or anything like this. Meaning to say, if the data is sitting in the object lock bucket, they come with a fixed retention policy, and it come in maybe numbers of days to protect our data. Now, if you set it for 60 days, after the data is written there, it needs to sit in there for 60 days. It is 60 days. So after 60 days, only I can delete the data. So you need to prepare and ready the budget to pay for the 60 days storage consumption charges. Right? That's why if you plan to use this, think twice. It might incur more money. And later, if you find that it's too costly, it will be too late because you are not able to remove the data. Maybe you destroy the entire bucket, it might be possible, but it will also affect other backup data, for example. So it will actually have some limitation here. Alright. So remember, after data actually stored into the object lock bucket, you can't do any changes to it. You need to wait until the backup data expired, okay? Already finished their own retention policy on the object lock, only you can delete the data from it. Okay, so additional costs apply, and Vim will add in additional 10 days to your original immutability period applied in the S3 object storage. A Vim will add on additional 10 days. This is how they configure. So if you enable in your S3 object storage for 10 days, your actual data stored there will basically come with 20 days of lock period. So this Vim will add in additional 10 days just for additional precaution. Okay? Maybe to prevent some misconfiguration, maybe customer actually enable the immutable period, maybe with default like 1 day only, it might not be safe enough. So additional 10 days here will be much more safer or best practice reasonable. Okay? So immutable period can only be set, adjusted, and turned off for future backup copies. As well as I mentioned, if the backup data sits into the object storage with immutable configure, you have no way for you to change it anymore later. Until the backup data got expired, only I can do changes to it, maybe deleting it whatsoever. Okay? So there's no way for you to change your period. That's why please be careful. You will incur additional costs over here. Alright. So those are the tips. If you plan to utilize immutable function running on S3 storage, you need to think twice. How many backup copies are there required? How long for you to actually sit there? Those are additional costs. That's why if you find that it is a bit tedious and not cheap at all, Vim version 11 actually introduced another support on Linux repository, also can be used for immutable backup that we will cover later. Right? So in version 11, if you plan to enable immutable backup, one will be in Amazon S3 storage, public cloud subscription. Another one will be using your Linux-based repository on-prem to achieve something similar. Right? So we'll look into that later. Now, when you look into SOBR, I have the performance tier repository, right? What if one of the repository, if I want to, for example, shut it down temporarily to do some maintenance, or maybe to change the disk, change the card itself, doing temporary maintenance, you can mark the repository to maintenance mode. Okay, so when you mark the repository to maintenance mode, you can use this mode. At least your backup will still be able to run, but it will write to a different repository that is part of your same SOBR extent. So that over here, you don't need to actually change much things. Okay? So when you put it into maintenance mode, you can shut down your repository to do some changes temporarily, and then bring it up again later. Okay, so over here you will see using this maintenance mode, it is for a temporary maintenance option, for example. Okay, so they will not write in any new data there, then you can do maintenance and then after that bring it online again. So what if I have a scenario whereby I do not want to use this repository anymore? I already buy a new hardware. Okay. Now, traditional ways of doing this is to move the data from one repository to another manually. Before you add in has your new repository and choose the new one. So here, because moving the backup data nowadays is pretty huge and they require more time. And when you're moving the backup data, you might not be able to perform a backup. So Vim here using SOBR give you this flexibility. If I enable sealing, okay, if I seal the extent, what happens? After I seal it, I'm telling Vim that, okay, this repository, I do not want to use it anymore, but inside, all those backup data is still valuable to me. So what happens? Vim will seal this extent. They will not write new backup data into it anymore, but the backup data inside will able to be used still because your sealed repository is still online. Just I will not write new data to it. I will write to a different repository, maybe a new one that you add on to the SOBR. So what happens to this sealed repository? I will actually able to use it for other purposes. For example, now if you enable maintenance and seal mode at the same time, when these two is applied at the same time, what happens? Maintenance mode will override seal mode, yeah? So maintenance mode will take over. When your extent, your repository extent is in seal mode, you're still able to restore from it using the data inside to restore your backup. You can utilize the data there to merge into another repository if you're using Forever for incremental, or maybe you're doing a synthetic full backup. And if the data is expired, they will remove it also. So after you enable seal mode to the extent, maybe you need to give it some time like 1 or 2 weeks or even 1 month time. After that, you will see the repository will be empty without any backup file. Because why? After merging, deleting the expired data, your new file should be stored in a different repository now. And the old one here now will be empty because you did not write in any new backup data anymore. The older one is already all moved out. And then it is a time for you to actually shut down the repository and remove it from the SOBR, for example. Okay? So this is another option and flexible for you to manage your scale backup repository this way. Okay? Okay, so now next thing we have this new feature added in. So starting from version 11, okay, we have this archive tier support. Okay, archive tier support, yeah. So earlier we already discussed about performance tier, capacity tier, right? Now, capacity tier is the object storage from public cloud. Okay? It comes in a cost to keep your data there. And if you plan to store your data for a longer time, then we need to see, is there any additional storage tier that costs me lesser money or not? Now, in Amazon and Microsoft, they have additional archive storage here. Amazon call it Glacier. This is for deep archive. Microsoft comes with the Azure Blob Archive tier. Now, these two will offer cheaper cost of storage as compared to the regular capacity tier data. Okay? Now, we are looking onto cost per gigabyte here. Glacier and Archive tier usually give you cheaper cost per gigabyte charges, but using Archive tier is designed to keep your data for a longer time. Okay, so over here, how do they charge? Pretty easy. If you plan to keep your data in Archive tier, you need to keep it for a longer period of time. They buy maybe in a package. So maybe the cost is similar, but in Archive tier, you can keep it for even longer time. So that's why the charges as compared to the regular tier, it will be cheaper that way. Okay? That's why this is designed if you are planning to keep your data longer than usual, then you need to compare. Maybe keeping the data for 3 years, how much it costs on the regular capacity tier and how much it costs in the Archive tier. Maybe you subscribe to a plan to keep data for 3 years, Archive tier give you additional discount, for example. Then it's better to keep it into Archive tier so that you can bring down the overall storage charges per month or per year based on this. Now, what is the disadvantage? We need to consider all these things because when your data move into Archive tier, now you plan to keep it for 3 years, no issue. Definitely there will be a cost saving there. But the problem here is if I plan to restore data from Archive tier, what happens? Going in is free. Out, charge higher. Now, moving data out from the Glacier, they will charge even higher. So they will move to capacity tier, and then capacity tier will need to go out again for another charges. So compared to the download fee, regular tier download fee is cheaper. That's why even Veeam over there, they actually ask you to think twice. Are you planning to keep data for a longer time and not planning to restore from it anytime soon? This is just your last resort, backup. If you really restore from it, you are desperate to do so. Meaning to say you are there to pay additional costs because you really need the data back. If not, I can keep it for audit purposes, keep it for just standing by without any restoration going on, then it will give you more saving. Okay, so remember, you need to check how much it costs maybe for periods of time like 3 years down the road. Maybe Archive tier give you more saving, but you need to bear in mind if you restore from it, it will cost you even more money. That's why you see here. Archive tier is the additional tier on top of it, and you will see that they will move GFS full backup from your capacity tier to the Archive tier. Okay, so avoid moving data to Archive tier if retention is too low, as you can see here, higher cost. And then when you try to restore from it, it will even charge you higher cost as compared to the regular tier. Okay, so you see here, they can also have another option here to store your archive backup as standalone full. So what happens here? Now, over here, when I move data to Archive tier, first thing, they will require to run a temporary proxy. So this is actually like your worker node service. Okay? So this one might incur some additional charges. Additional charges. Now, in Veeam, we don't charge you anything extra. The Veeam backup software already support Archive tier by default. You can edit Archive tier, you can use it straight away. Veeam don't charge you anything extra. Only the public cloud solution will charge you. Okay? They will charge you your usage on the capacity tier first thing, and then when you move your data from regular capacity tier to Archive tier, they might charge you additional temporary proxy worker node to convert your data from this capacity tier to the archive tier. So this will need to run maybe for hours before the data gets stored and copied to archive tier. So this might incur additional costs, and then archive tier will start to charge you money on that. Okay. So when you're moving your backup, you see the independent full or dedupe, aka block clone. Your data in the capacity here usually will be using block clone just like dedupe function. Now, compared to regular tier, archive tier now may be charged cheaper per gigabyte. Maybe using archive tier is a better idea to duplicate the data out so that your full backup will be able to store as standalone full, individual, separate full backup file. So it will give you even more reliability in case if really a data corruption block happens, it will not affect all your full backup that shares the same data dedupe. Okay, so this is another option available. You need to be careful whether the cost will be saving or not over here using this option over here. Okay. So when you're utilizing archive tier, another very important point will be restoring from it. Now, when you try to retrieve data from archive tier to capacity tier, they will incur a very high cost because it's designed for deep archive. So it is not designed for very frequent restore purposes. When you move data from archive tier back to capacity tier, they even give you a fee package on how much to charge you based on your urgency of your data. If you can wait for a longer time, the charges will generally be lower to pull your data back to capacity tier. If you're desperate to have it to revive your services, then you need to pay higher money. So over here, after you pay that cost to move back to capacity tier, you will see that over here, Veeam gives you these additional options. Specify how long to keep the retrieve backup that is moved back to capacity tier. You will be warned when the backup are about to expire. What do you mean by that? I already pay money to move data back to capacity tier to facilitate my restore. Okay? This data sitting in capacity tier will not be permanent. Okay? Over here, you can set to keep your data for how many days when you move it back to capacity tier. So you can automate the task so that you do not actually forget about it after you perform a restore, and they will help you to delete from capacity tier so that you do not get double charge. Okay? Because you have data sitting in both tier and you need to pay money for both sides. Alright? So over here, because your retrieval cost is pretty high, Veeam gives you an additional mechanism here. You set in how many days to expire, and Veeam will help you to monitor. If the data is almost expired, you can ask Veeam to send you a notification by how many hours before the published data got expired. So before they got expired, at least you get notification to see, okay, do you still need the data in your capacity tier? If you need it, come back and maybe move it to your other places, etc. Things like this. If not, later the data will get deleted straight away. And you need to pay additional money again to retrieve from archive tier back to your regular capacity tier. Okay, so Veeam here gives you some additional options to help you manage your data and manage your costs more thoroughly. So you will get some email similar to this. Your retrieve Veeam backup are about to expire. Okay, just give you a notice. Then you need to go back in there to check. Okay, so backup from AWS published on capacity tier of SOBR will be moved back to archive tier in 1 hour. To keep backup longer, select it in the backup mode. Right click on it and prolong the retrieval period. So you can extend this particular retention policy. So you can extend it for a longer time if you still need it from capacity tier. If not, they will move it back to archive tier again. Things like this. Okay? So this is using archive tier new to V11, and remember archive tier is a supported tier to your capacity tier. Meaning to say, if I'm using archive tier, it is only for archive purposes. It cannot use to fulfill your 3-2-1 rules requirement. Okay. So those are for archived here. Any questions so far they want to ask before I move on further? Okay, so next thing will be dedupe appliances. Okay, so if you plan to use dedupe appliances, Veeam has special integration to 4 of the special model. Okay? If you do not have this model, maybe your storage do have dedupe function, etc., you can actually let the equipment do their own job. Just that Veeam here will not able to optimize or to speed up to work together. Okay? Maybe performance will be a bit lower as compared to the one here that is running. So over here, as you can see, we can utilize Dell EMC data domain, HPE store ones that comes with Veeam integration with maybe DDBoost or Catalyst, and based on Dell EMC and also HPE. So these two will require additional function enabled on the equipment. Okay, one is called DDBoost, another one is called store ones Catalyst. Now the other two here, okay, so these two will require usually the gateway server. Okay, gateway server, yeah. And they require some additional license to give additional integration. Then another one, XR Grid and also Quantum DXI, they are using native Linux OS as their operating system. Okay, so data mover service will be running here. Okay, on local. So for XR Grid and Quantum DXI, I don't need to have additional component like gateway server because XR Grid and Quantum DXI, we will push the data mover service software to install locally, just like a plugin. I can utilize these two storage directly like a normal repository server. These are some additional integration with them. So you don't need additional things here to help you out, things like this. Okay? So these are 4 different supported dedupe appliances that you need to add in here when you add a backup repository. You'll see additional line here called deduplicating appliances. Okay? Only supporting these 4 special model with this special integration. So if you have some other storage that come with dedupe function and it is not the supported model, then I will need to add in like a normal repository by either using it as stars or NAS. Then maybe you need to utilize another machine to mount as a LUN or a gateway server to connect them as a NAS. Like this. Okay? So this is the dedupe appliances support. Like this. Pretty easy. The next thing, we move on to the hardened repository. Okay? Hardened repository. Over here, we will able to utilize Linux-based repository server to offer additional feature support. Okay? Now, in Linux operating system, now we do able to integrate with the local immutable function. Now, when your data stored into Linux repository, we can actually change or apply immutable attributes to the file itself. This is to avoid your backup file to be changed or deleted from the external connectivity. Okay? So when you are in local machine, when you go into the file system itself, when you try to remove the file, it will also give you error because after the file marked as immutable, you generally cannot delete the file at all, as you can see here. If you plan to delete it from the OS level or from the software level, you will see error. Now, immutable backup here will not only protect from deletion, the backup file basically will not support any changes mid-run. Okay, so over here we see using this immutable, what happens? When ransomware attack, for example, they will either encrypt your data or maybe delete your data, for example. If your backup data is immutable, even though if they infect the machine, they will not able to encrypt your backup data. So you are pretty safe, you know that your backup data is still available. At least you can use them to restore your environment. Okay. So after you clean up the virus, you still have these sets of backup data. I can use them to restore my production environment with this immutable repository. Okay. So this is supported using Linux-based OS. I already tested in my environment using CentOS and also Ubuntu. It works fine. I will show you later on a demo. Because in your lab itself, I think you have one Linux repository that comes with this feature, but they don't really tell you to see and check what is the options over there. All right. So in version 11 now, to create this hardened repository, first thing you need to prepare your Linux repository, okay, with OS installed, with your drive mounted, etc., with folder created and mount it to the correct drive. Then I can add in to the backup server. Okay, so over here, if you plan to use hardened repository, we will prefer to use non-root account. So you can create a local user account, temporary grant them administrator rights, so that you can add in the repository and then proceed to do some basic software installation. After that, you don't need administrator rights anymore for the account. Okay, so using non-root account, then you can utilize this option, what we call single-use credential, okay, for hardened repository. And just a moment, let me see question. Yes, it's a great feature, only in V11, I remember that. Okay, some of my customers are looking into this already, that's why we are trying to propose to them at least having additional insurance to your backup data here. Okay, so that you know if your environment got attacked by ransomware, you know that there is a Linux repository in place, that all your backup data is still safe there, I can restore from it. Okay? So another additional option here will be make recent backup immutable. So with this option, you will see that your Linux repository now have this additional feature. Once the backup file stored into the repository, they will apply additional immutable period. Okay? So later I will show you how the numbers of days calculated according to your backup file behavior. All right. So remember, if you're using immutable storage, you need to make sure your repository will require more capacity than usual because they need to keep your backup data for a longer time. They will not delete it as soon as they got expired because over here we added additional days of copy to it. Okay? So on the permission requirement you see here, I can basically utilize the account. Okay? And all these things or services will be running as normal user account or root account here. Okay, so service to remove immutable flag when time expired. So all this will be some permission that your account required to get. Okay? Not necessarily full admin rights, but certain more granular permission to your non-root account. Okay, so this will be safer basically. That's why if your account is compromised, even the hackers come in, they can't use the account to do much damage to the machine, for example. Okay? And then next thing, if you plan to utilize immutable repository, they will actually give you some limitation in job compatibility. If I am planning to use immutable repository, backup job will only able to support forward incremental with synthetic and active rules here. Immutability repository is compatible with forward incremental job, with periodic full backup, and without rollbacks. Forward incremental only. Forever forward and reverse incremental will not be able to support this. That's why if you want the flexibility, I would suggest you to utilize backup copy job with immutable storage so that your primary job can select any options they want. When you create additional backup copy, you put it into this repository, and then your backup copy will also have hard requirement with GFS, which earlier if you point to normal repository, it doesn't require that. Because using a fixed schedule GFS, they will utilize your backup copy job like a normal forward incremental. This is the hard requirement here. If you did not change this, you are not able to create the job at all. Okay, so we'll see here, immutable repository is compatible with backup copy job with configured GFS. I just need to enable additional GFS full backup in order for them to utilize this immutable storage, because merging the data, etc., all this will not be allowed. Yes, the file itself will be individual file, and I need to apply the immutable flag rate. So it doesn't support you to change the data every now and then. Yeah, they will fix the date. It will be forever until the date got expired for the dataset. Yeah, that's why this will be the hard requirement posted to your job if you plan to utilize immutable storage. Yeah. Okay. So how to install the hardened repository? Pretty easy over here. You can create a non-root account first thing. A non-root account will be used to add in your repository from Vim perspective. Okay, then add Linux with unprivileged user account, single user credential options in Vim, create a backup folder with permission using this account. Yeah? So this account at least need to have permission to the backup folder to read and write data over there. Yeah, so that I can write backup data and I can read backup data for restoration. Check whether Vim transport is running as defined user and remove the elevate to root permission after all this has been done. So you can temporarily add it as administrator group and then remove it later. Okay? But making sure that they still have permission to the folder. Yeah, so this is very important. Okay? So after you add in, they will ask you which particular folder to use. You need to make sure the folder and the file system do able to support immutable function. So I'm using XFS in my repository. Okay, so you will see here, utilizing this particular, what we call immutable repository, they can only support image level backup. So your virtual machine backup, your agent backup can all store into the Linux backup repository with immutable function. But they do not support NAS backup data or plugin data such as Oracle Rack Server, for example. Okay? Not Rack Server, sorry, Oracle RMAN plugin. Okay, Oracle RMAN plugin. So those plugin is not supported to use the immutable Linux repository. Okay, so requirement will be backup mode together with periodic full. It will basically be forward incremental. They protect against external threats only. Meaning to say, if you have the root account, you can log into the OS or from console, you can destroy the entire machine. Nobody can stop you about that. That's why over there, it is still not 100% bulletproof. Because when you have a root account, it's considered like internal intrusion already. You can do whatever you want from the OS and it might eventually cause the backup data to get lost. But now we're looking on to ransomware attack. If they got access to your machine remotely, they can see the file, but they cannot do any changes to it. At least it is safe from ransomware. But it's not safe for internal intrusion. That's why over here you will see, if you want to have a more secure backup data, maybe hosting your hardened repository in another different location with nobody accessing over there physically might be a better idea, or utilizing S3 object log or tape, etc. things like this. Okay, so these are just some of the suggestions here. Any question regarding the immutable repository before I move on to the demo to show you what is required? Okay, so now for immutable storage, pretty easy. I need to add in my Linux machine first. So you see my Linux host, I'm using CentOS and also Ubuntu for testing. Then I add in as the backup repository here. So you will see I have Ubuntu XFS, CentOS XFS, both used for immutable. This will be the IP, and this will be the path to it. Okay. So this is the repository add-on. So when I check on the CentOS, going to property. So we'll see adding this as a Linux repository, I will get these additional options detected. Okay, so you need to select your path or folder for you to store your backup data. So later we'll discuss about the fast cloning using SFS. Okay? So those are the impacts of storage. So you will see here, additionally, we have make recent backup immutable for 14 days. So I will have additional 14 days applied to my backup data to lock them, okay, for maybe on top of your retention policy. So your retention policy, if you put in 7 days, those will actually get ignored because here in the backend inside the repository, I have 14 days of immutable period. So basically your backup file is not following your primary backup job retention policy. They will follow whatever you set here. So it's not 7 days now, it will keep inside a repository for 14 days because it is immutable backup. I will not delete it until 14 days. So after 14 days, the entire backup chain will get removed. Okay, so later I will show some backup data behavior. So this is set inside your backup repository instead. Yeah? So when you point to the backup repository, your job will follow the immutable configuration. So when you see here, if I go to edit here for my immutable storage, so you will see that under storage here, if I select this guy, Ubuntu, for example, okay, I need to either utilize GFS or I need to go to advanced to enable synthetic full or active full. Okay. So if I do not do this, okay, if I click on next, you will see that over here they give you an error message. It's a hard requirement. If you plan to utilize immutable repository, system will detect it and they will tell you your backup mode currently do not able to support it. Please configure at least periodic full by enabling your synthetic full or your active full or maybe your GFS, for example. Okay, so that's why my job here will require to enable this synthetic full. Then click next, only they will able to accept it. So this is the hard requirement for sync. Okay. So after I have this job running for some time, you will see that inside your backup under disk, this will be your backup data available, right? Over here. Now, if I select, for example, my SOBR here for immutable storage, if I go to property, so moment, this one is not really clear. Let me show you this, maybe. Okay, so this one is clearer. Okay, now inside my backup job here, you will see that, just a moment, okay, I will have additional column called immutable until. So this will only show if you are using immutable repository. So what this actually tells you, the backup file here that I have, you will see I am utilizing normal forward incremental, right? So you will see full backup file and the change of incremental backup file here, which they are dependent to each other, right? They're pretty easy. Now you see that how do they calculate the date? My repository comes with configurations of 14 days of immutable period. Now, if I'm utilizing 7 or 8 of August to add in 14 days, I will only get 21 or 22, right? But in fact, you will see the date here is 27 August. Why? Because your backup is actually looking into the entire chain. Meaning to say your incremental backup, the last one still dependent on all this file and also the full backup file. Your immutable date will utilize the last incremental backup date, add on 14 days to get this particular date, and all the other dependent backup file will share the same immutable date. This is just to let the system know this chain will have the same protection period after the data got expired, your immutable period got expired, the entire chain will get deleted at the same time. So you will not have certain point can be removed, certain point cannot, etc. They goes together as one particular chain. Okay, so this is the first chain. And then when you look into the second chain, as you can see here, full backup, until the last incremental backup. Happens the same thing here still. Okay? I will be utilizing the last incremental backup 20th of August, add in 14 days, for example. Then I will get September 3rd as my immutable period. So that the entire chain now will follow. Right? If you use 14, it will be 28. It does not actually tally. They will follow the last incremental, which is a date for them to expire the immutable protection. The entire chain will follow the same thing. So the entire chain can be removed at the same time when the data got expired. Okay, so this is the behavior to your backup data. That's why you will see that over here, if you are using immutable storage, you need to make sure to cover additional backup chain capacity in your repository. So usually I will recommend you to increase the immutable period and maybe week by week. Do not apply like straight away 60 days and 90 days, things like this. If not, later your repository will be full straight away because you are marking the backup data to protect for longer time, and now you are not able to keep more data there because the older one is still not removed yet. Okay? So if you found that your repository still have enough space, maybe it's a better idea to increase it. I will suggest you to increase it bit by bit, phrase by phrase. Add on additional 1 week, see how the backup data behave, any additional space utilization there. If still manageable, then we increase another week again, week by week here. Okay, pretty easy here. So this is the things that you can see from a backup server list. How many backup files are there? What's the space? And how long they will keep. Pretty easy. Now, when you go into the operating system, okay, if you go into your repository, now my test machine here is a virtual machine, so it's easy for me to show you from the VM console. Okay, so if I go into the virtual machine console, okay, screen is already there. Let me see here. Okay. So this is the CentOS. So my login here, you will see that I'm running in terminal. My backup file is in this folder. Now, when I actually type in list attributes -L, I will see a list of backup file here. You see via BBK, VRB file, and they are immutable, right? So this is how you can check your file inside your Linux from the OS level to see their attributes first thing. Now this file is immutable, right? When I try to perform sudo remove the backup file, this is the command that I run. Now you see that even though I put in the sudo password, you will see that cannot remove, operation not permitted. So you will see that even from the OS level, from the console level, you cannot delete the file. So if ransomware attack the machine, they see the file, they cannot encrypt it whatsoever. This is what we call immutable backup file. So it is safer now with this additional backup in case if your primary backup storage or repository got attacked by ransomware and all your backup data got encrypted, at least you have another additional one here, standby. Okay, good thing is you're just required to deploy Linux operating system. Usually will be free because it's an open source OS. You can repurpose any old server hardware. Okay, come with more capacity, has your additional archive storage here that come with immutable function. So that you know you at least have this last resort insurance for you to restore data and you don't lose everything at one go if you have ransomware attack. Alright. Easy here. This is some demo that I show to you because in your lab it doesn't really talk much. Okay? I will just want to share with you how this feature looks like and how cool is it. It's good for your customer also. They are maybe looking into some of the solution like this. for you, you need to actually deploy all this to test on your own before you can implement it for a customer. Okay? Any question for the immutable repository function? Okay, so remember this is only for version 11, yeah? Okay, version 11. Okay, so now, next thing. Let's see, the last one will be impacts of file system. Okay, impacts of file system. Now, impacts of file system here, you will see, if I am utilizing normal file system without additional feature, what happens when you are trying to create a synthetic full? Okay. Now, when I try to create synthetic full backup, what happens? I will copy the data that is sitting inside my repository to generate additional full backup copies, right? Now you see that when I'm doing this copy and paste, I'm doing block to block copy and paste operation. Now when I'm doing this actual copy and paste, my repository space will get occupied, and this copy and paste operation will require more time because I'm doing actual data moving. Okay. Now, the operation will prolong if your full backup is very huge in size, and they will also occupy additional space. If you have dedupe function backend in the storage, they will need to dedupe again the entire data in order to save space. So they will require a lot of additional operation here. Okay. And not to mention, when you're doing actual data copy and paste, they will require more time to complete. So how to simplify and optimize this particular operation? If you are utilizing the supported file system with fast clone function, okay? So which file system do support it? Fast clone is supported in Windows OS REFS. And then you have the Linux OS XFS. These two file systems come with a feature called fast clone technology. Okay, fast clone technology. Now, fast clone, what do they do? Pretty easy. If fast clone is supported when I perform synthetic operation, okay, so this is still your same synthetic full, yeah? Now, I will not be creating the full backup straight away by actually copying the data. I will be using pointers, okay, to create full file over here. Now, because using the fast clone, the file system knows that you're trying to duplicate the same data. Why you want to do it? If not, later you need to dedupe again. I will help you just do pointers to the same data. You will come with a new file, but your actual space consumption will be the same because you are referring to the same data set. They are trying to achieve objectives just like deduplication. Okay? So by trying to share the same data as much as possible, and using pointers level here, I do not need to perform actual data copying. That's why using fast clone, the synthetic full operation can happen and complete in a second or minutes level sometimes. And so this is very, very good feature. And with this, now I have no problem in selecting any types of mode to run. First thing, they improve on synthetic full backup. Okay, very fast. If you're using synthetic full, now this is not really a good example. They didn't really show you the particular synthetic full operation. Let me just show you here. Okay, do I have it here? Not really. Now, over here, if you have this fast clone function, let me just show from one of my jobs. Okay. Now, if you have fast clone enabled, you will see that over here, you will have another additional bracket here, fast clone. Okay. This applies to your Linux XFS or your Windows REFS. Fast clone is there. You will see that I'm utilizing forever for incremental. my full backup file merge, how long do I need? I can complete it within 53 seconds here, as you can see. So it's pretty fast as compared to the normal operation. So using this fast clone, it can also apply to your full backup, synthetic full, your forever forward incremental, and also reverse incremental. So using this mode, you are now free to select any options that you need because they can able to speed up all this process by using pointers. So using forever forward incremental, they do not need to merge your actual data anymore. They are just using pointers to redirect it to the original data block by no need to copy it anymore. Same thing goes to reverse. Okay? So they will write and then they will redirect your data to the same block. Though you do not need to move the data here and there anymore, it will be faster that way. Okay? So normal incremental backup and also active full will not get this benefit because those are writing unique data. Only applicable if you are trying to make additional copies of the already duplicated data inside your repository. That's why you will see that over here using this REFS. Okay? Using this REFS. Now, if you are utilizing Linux repository, you will see that in the property here, you will have this additional option. Fast clone on XFS volume. Okay? Fast clone on XFS volume. So if you enable this, Vim will go and detect the path here to see whether the underlying drive is it utilizing XFS file system or not. If they're using XFS, then fast clone will be enabled by default, okay, with this checkbox. This is for Linux. If you are running on Windows, Windows does not need to do anything. If you have REFS installed on this particular path, you will see that over here, under property, when you go to repository, they do not have any additional options. By default, Windows, if you are running on REFS, I will utilize fast clone straight away. Okay? So this is the configuration and the way how you can activate and enable the feature. Okay? So any question regarding this file system optimization for synthetic operation and also your Linux immutable repository going on?